They told you JAX was lying. But what if this was the one time he actually told the truth? Let's dispense with the niceties. Kristen Doute absolutely hooked up with Brittany Cartwright. The denial campaign that followed wasn't just unconvincing, it was practically a masterclass in bad cover-ups. Of all the improbable plot lines that have spilled out of Vanderpump Rules, this one was never truly up for debate. The alleged encounter, Kristen chowing down on the Kentucky muffin, as it has so delicately been put, has been circling the fandom like a vulture for years, and despite the feeble protests, the consensus is clear. It happened. The only real mystery is how long anyone pretended otherwise. Brittany's denials have always reeked of fear, not fear of the truth itself, but of its reception. Particularly from her conservative family, who, astonishingly, seemed more disturbed by whispers that JAX might be gay than by his record-breaking string of betrayals. Homophobia wasn't just in the air, it was the wallpaper. Brittany's panic wasn't about being exposed on national television. It was about the reaction from back home, where Christian love tends to come with an itemized list of conditions and a pitchfork. Then there's Jax Taylor. Human lie detector he is not, except when he's throwing someone else under the bus. A man who fabricates his own resume of truth and fiction, yet somehow manages uncanny accuracy when it comes to the dirt on others. In this case, his accusation against Kristen seemed less like a fabrication and more like a strategic leak, stir chaos, shift blame, and set the stage for yet another relationship implosion he could walk away from with a shred of public sympathy. Kristen, for her part, has always excelled at deflection. Her performances, equal parts melodrama and martyrdom, do little to hide her fascination with both JAX and Brittany. That triangle has never been about friendship. It's a slow-moving, emotional car crash with Kristen behind the wheel, grinning. And Brittany? Her evolving storylines, from furious denial to foggy half-admissions, don't inspire confidence. One year it's nothing happened. The next it's maybe there was kissing, maybe some boob stuff, followed by a casual shrug and a plea of drunken amnesia. If the goal was plausible deniability, it missed the mark. If anything, the disjointed timeline only reinforces what was already obvious. The whole affair is a case study in what happens when reality TV blurs with actual reality, when people with deep-seated insecurities and performative personas attempt to edit their reputations mid-season. But unlike the good time girls of yore, who could party in peace without a camera crew in tow, Brittany and Kristen were playing their scandal out on Bravo's main stage. So yes, it happened. And yes, they lied. Poorly. The only real shock is that anyone ever bothered to pretend otherwise. Everyone says Shauna's in love. What if she's actually in a one-woman stage play? If reality television ever needed justification as a legitimate psychological study, Vanderpump Rules Season 6, Episode 6, provides it in spades. This episode doesn't merely entertain, it dissects the fragility of the human ego, the elasticity of denial, and the complete breakdown of adult communication, all in just under 42 minutes. Let's begin with Tom Sandoval, who spends the episode radiating sexual frustration so intensely. It's a wonder the cameras didn't melt. His emotional unraveling begins when Ariana, his supposed partner, commits the unthinkable. She exists in the same room while Lala confesses a long-buried audio scandal involving JAX cheating on Brittany, with an elderly woman sleeping nearby for added tabloid flair. For this grave offense of witnessing, Tom reacts as if Ariana handed over state secrets to a foreign power. His outrage is as theatrical as it is misplaced. Meanwhile, Ariana responds with the weariness of someone forced to babysit a toddler mid-tantrum. The toddler, in this case, being a grown man terrified that Jax's fury might somehow splash onto him through Ariana's passive proximity to the truth. Elsewhere, Jax and Brittany are locked in their own private loop of heartbreak theater. They manage to break up 5 times in one episode, which is either impressive or alarming depending on one's standards for emotional stability. Brittany forgives him for the 10th time because he mutters something vague and deeply uninspired like, "I'm changing," or "I didn't mean it." It's the emotional equivalent of unplugging a malfunctioning router and hoping for the best. Ineffective, but oddly comforting. And then there's Kristen, eerily calm, suspiciously composed. Her sudden shift into tranquility is so unnatural it feels like a trap. Like finding a fire alarm that isn't chirping at 3 a.m. Nice, sure, but impossible to trust. She's deep in her "I haven't caused a scene in weeks" era, which might actually be growth, or just a temporary ceasefire. Either way, it's unnerving. Meanwhile, Katie and Schwartz continue to baffle as the poster couple for incompatibility. Their communication strategy consists entirely of passive-aggressive sighs, wordless resentment, and Schwartz pretending he's never heard of the English language when confronted. Katie looks perpetually one internal monologue away from fleeing the country. Schwartz, in turn, gives off the energy of a student who forgot about a major exam and is hoping charm will substitute for competence. And then there's Shiana. Ah, Shiana. Glorious, deluded Shiana, marching through life with the fervor of someone committed to playing the lead in a fantasy no one else is auditioning for. Her relationship with Rob is less a romance and more a one-woman PR campaign. She declares, with robotic cheer, that Rob would never cheat, never lie, never disappoint. One might think he's been engineered in a lab for girlfriend appeasement. "He hung a TV in 7 minutes," she chirps, as though speed-mounting electronics is proof of moral character. To the outside observer, Shiana isn't so much dating Rob as she is staging an immersive theater piece titled "This is Totally Real Love. Please clap." It's not a relationship. It's a delusional PowerPoint presentation she's desperately trying to sell, complete with pre-written talking points and glittery infographics of wishful thinking. Rob, presumably, is somewhere Googling how to break up with someone who's already scripted your wedding vows. And looming over it all is the Sandoval meltdown, which feels less about Ariana's presence during Lala's truth bomb and more about Sandoval's paranoia that he will become collateral damage. It's not outrage, it's self-preservation, disguised as indignation. As the episode edges toward James' inevitable recap to Lisa Vanderpump, a reliable comic reprieve, the viewer is left emotionally bankrupt, spiritually overdrawn, and mentally exhausted. It's a masterclass in chaotic energy and human fragility. A reality television masterpiece masquerading as trash, or perhaps the other way around. Tom Schwartz isn't clueless, he's calculated. And it's time we stop pretending otherwise. Katie Maloney spent over a decade trying to build a life with a man whose emotional depth rivals that of a plastic houseplant. Watching Vanderpump Rules, particularly the pre-Scandoval episodes, one is left with a single question. How did Katie endure Tom Schwartz for as long as she did? Her expectations weren't exactly lofty. She wanted a partner who would listen, support her, and perhaps avoid publicly humiliating her every chance he got. Instead, she got a man-child whose default mode was passive aggression, followed by a teary-eyed, "I didn't mean it," when the consequences caught up. Repeatedly, Katie was dismissed, ignored, mocked, and gaslit, only for Schwartz to portray himself as the wounded party when she finally walked away. It's a masterstroke of self-victimization, and unfortunately for her, the group often bought it. Then came the Raquel debacle. Schwartz was given one clear boundary post-divorce. Don't hook up with anyone in the friend group. Naturally, he zeroed in on Raquel. Whether it was genuine attraction or a desperate bid to shield Sandoval's actual affair, the result was yet another gut punch for Katie. And once again, Schwartz feigned confusion. Why is Katie upset? We're divorced, as if betrayal ends with a marriage certificate. The drink James hurled in Schwartz's face wasn't just satisfying, it was necessary. Frankly, he deserved more. Yet somehow, the friend group rallied behind Tom. Sympathy for the terminally spineless, perhaps? Even Katie's so-called friends twisted the narrative to paint her as possessive, when all she asked for was basic decency. And let's not forget the infamous ring on a string moment, a sadistic little stunt dressed up as sentimentality. If Schwartz doesn't have a humiliation kink specifically involving Katie, he certainly plays the part well. The man delighted in dangling hope just to yank it away. Season 10 was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, with Katie cast as the nagging ex while Schwartz bumbled around, weaponizing his incompetence. Season 11 brings no redemption. At one point, Schwartz declares the score even after Katie does something post-divorce, as though years of mistreatment can be erased by a single moment. He beams as he says it, finally feeling he has the upper hand. The glee is nauseating. The logic? Non-existent. Katie's post-marriage behavior doesn't retroactively cleanse him of being a consistently awful husband. This is the same man who once pulled a police prank on her, watched her understandably panic, and then accused her of overreacting. His apologies were always some variation of, "I didn't mean it that way," a pitiful excuse that absolved him in the eyes of those willing to accept the poor, clueless Tom act. Tequila Katie? Weaponized against her for years, even as she evolved and he remained emotionally stunted. Schwartz has been rewarded for his mediocrity for far too long. That Bravo now sees fit to cast him on the Valley, alongside Lala and whatever remnants of Scandival they can scrape together, suggests they're banking on hate-watching to carry the franchise. They might be right, but don't mistake interest for admiration. Schwartz isn't compelling, he's exhausting. In the end, Katie didn't just dodge a bullet. She survived a slow-moving train wreck disguised as a marriage. Let's stop pretending Schwartz is some harmless, hapless fool. He knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the problem. Lisa Vanderpump forgives cheaters, liars, even bigots, but not Kristen Doubt. Ever wondered why? Of all the irredeemables on Vanderpump Rules, one might assume Kristen Doubt would be somewhere in the middle of the toxicity leaderboard. Certainly not a saint, but far from the most egregious offender. And yet, Lisa Vanderpump's vendetta against Kristen remains oddly persistent, almost comically so, especially when juxtaposed with the forgiveness and favor she's lavished upon far worse offenders. Kristen, for all her chaos during the early seasons, has never quite matched the levels of unhinged behavior displayed by many of her castmates, particularly the men. Let's start with the obvious. Stassi physically slapped Kristen on camera and somehow walked away with not just her job, but a closer relationship with Lisa. Lala's resume includes a rotating carousel of bad behavior, and yet she enjoys Lisa's ongoing support. James Kennedy? A walking HR violation, still clutched to Lisa's bosom like a prodigal son. Tom Sandoval? Public enemy number one in the Scandival saga, and yet Lisa continues to offer him a platform and, more importantly, grace. And then there's Kristen, exiled, belittled, and routinely insulted in casual interviews, despite being one of the few former cast members who has demonstrably attempted to grow. At BravoCon, Lisa declared the only reason she'd acknowledge Kristen with a hello was because she had just given birth. Ah yes, maternal sacrifice apparently earns you a fleeting scrap of civility. How generous! Meanwhile, Lisa graciously welcomed Brittany and JAX, yes, that JAX, back into her empire, even after they spent years whining about Lisa's failure to coddle them during major life events. They bashed her on every podcast within reach, yet were handed The Valley, a show they were meant to anchor, though what they anchored most effectively was chaos. And yes, Lisa is an executive producer. No disdain there, apparently. So, what exactly is Kristen's unforgivable sin? Yes, she cursed out her manager. Yes, she wasn't a model employee. And yes, she played a central role in the Faith Stowers debacle, though, it must be said, Stassi was equally involved, and she now seems to sit at Lisa's right hand. The difference? Kristen never kissed the ring. She's never been manageable. She didn't play courtier in Lisa's feudal little kingdom of reality TV minions. There's a pattern in Lisa's benevolence. Men are given infinite chances. Women are not. More specifically, women who dare to challenge her authority, or worse, operate outside her control, are banished. Kristen is unpredictable, emotionally messy, and allergic to submission. That alone seems to warrant eternal exile in Vanderpump Land. The running gags about Kristen and Stassi, those tired quips Lisa can't help but drop, suggest that they don't matter so much that she simply must keep referencing them. It's a bit, yes, and a tired one. The narrative is threadbare, the disdain overplayed, and the selective forgiveness glaring. Kristen may have been a disaster, but in the grand scheme of Vanderpump's curated circus of dysfunction, she's far from the worst offender. The refusal to acknowledge her growth while embracing far messier people reeks less of moral high ground and more of personal grudge. It's not that Kristen can't be redeemed. It's that Lisa Vanderpump refuses to allow it. They didn't hide the drug use on Vanderpump Rules. They made jokes about it on camera. Rewatching Vanderpump Rules with hindsight is like watching a magician's act after someone's spoiled the trick. You suddenly notice the wires, the sleight of hand, and in this case, the dilated pupils and the teeth-chattering mania. What once passed for garden-variety reality TV drama now reads like a walking cautionary tale in designer jeans. Enter JAX Taylor, the man, the myth, the cocaine-fueled meltdown. From the very beginning, JAX wasn't exactly subtle. The signs were there: bugged-out eyes, frantic mouth movements, unpredictable rage. But the chaos was so consistent, it somehow blurred into the background noise of the show. A slow-motion car crash that everyone mistook for just another Tuesday at Sir. And then there's the now infamous roast, a moment that aged like spoiled milk. Tom Sandoval's joke about Jax bursting into the room, high as a kite and declaring, "Guys, I can't feel my teeth." What once seemed like edgy banter now plays as a not-so-veiled cry for help. Subtlety has never been Vanderpump's strong suit, but this was brazen even by its own theatrical standards. Season 6 in particular reads like a descent into madness. Jax spiraling out at Sir and torching his relationship with Brittany wasn't just emotional immaturity, it was chemical chaos. His erratic behavior, the aggressive paranoia, the outlandish lies. See, the fictional Florida job offer, conveniently timed to sabotage Tom and Tom's bar launch. All of it snaps into focus when viewed through the lens of rampant drug use. And let's not ignore the more surgical clues, namely the ever-changing topography of Jax's face. A rhinoplasty here, a deviated septum there. At some point, his nose had seen more renovation than Lisa Vanderpump's wine cellar. The WWC recaps called it early, and they were right. The transformation wasn't just aesthetic, it was forensic evidence. What's most astonishing is how little effort was made to hide it. On a first watch, it's easy to miss, especially if distracted by, say, your phone. But a rewatch, free of digital interference and buoyed by the clarity of hindsight, reveals the glaringly obvious. Much of the cast was operating under the influence, and the erratic behavior we once chalked up to drama was, in many cases, pure intoxication. With the veil lifted, Vanderpump Rules doesn't just play like messy reality TV, it reads like a cautionary tale disguised as entertainment, one with a heavy-handed moral. When your entire personality is built on lies, jealousy, and whatever's left in your baggie, eventually, the cameras catch up. Sheena Shea isn't the victim she keeps pretending to be, and it's time to finally say out loud what the show keeps trying to gloss over. It's a mystery for the ages. How exactly did Sheena Shea manage to sell a book? The real question isn't whether people read it, but whether they did so without rolling their eyes into the next dimension. Her entire persona on Vanderpump Rules has been an exercise in deflection, performance, and thinly veiled insecurity masquerading as moral superiority. Let's begin with the cornerstone of her public relations nightmare, the Eddie Cibrian affair. Sheena knew full well that Eddie was married to Brandi Glanville when she got involved, yet she's spent the better part of a decade painting herself as the collateral damage in someone else's marriage. Her go-to defense? A masterclass in slippery storytelling. I didn't know. Well, not really. I found out later. But it's the rhetorical equivalent of shrugging while lighting a match in a fireworks factory. The issue isn't just the affair, it's the revisionist history she insists on peddling. Her refusal to take clear accountability has become the Sheena signature. And then, there's the chronic victimhood. Sheena is the rare kind of instigator who cries foul the moment anyone returns fire. She lobs passive-aggressive digs under the guise of just being honest. But the second she's confronted, it's instant meltdown. Why is everyone attacking me? The theatrics are less about emotion and more about optics, weaponized vulnerability designed to wring sympathy while dodging blame. Her friendships? As authentic as a sponsored Instagram post. Sheena's alliances are less about connection and more about storyline survival. She latches onto whoever is currently wearing the main character crown. First Ariana, then Sandoval, then a full-circle pivot back again, adapting her identity like a chameleon in a Bravo petri dish. It's not support, it's strategy. And it reeks of desperation. Sheena also possesses the uncanny ability to stir the pot while insisting she's holding the ladle for justice. Drama erupts, often with her fingerprints all over it, and somehow she's positioned herself as the whistleblower, not the arsonist. There's a certain audacity in causing chaos and then smugly reporting it as though she's the show's moral compass. Underpinning it all is a toxic blend of insecurity and mean girl energy. Her honesty is laced with spite. Her validation-seeking is endless. And the tears? Always ready to make a cameo when accountability threatens to knock. It's exhausting, transparent, and yet maddeningly persistent. To be fair, the Vanderpump Rules universe is hardly a sanctuary of emotionally mature behavior. Shiana isn't alone in playing these games. JAX practically invented them, and others follow suit in varying degrees of dysfunction. But Shiana stands out because she performs it all with a kind of polished self-delusion. She genuinely seems to believe she's the wronged party, the loyal friend, the misunderstood heroine. What she actually is? A deeply transactional character with a flair for turning every mess into a monologue. In short, the book might have been a fun read if it weren't marinated in Sheena's exhausting need to rewrite her own mythology. Her narrative might sell copies, but the truth? That's a story she's never been particularly interested in telling. Here's what no one wants to admit. The Season 3 cheating scandal was completely fabricated by the very people who were actually cheating. In the vast ecosystem of Vanderpump Rules, hypocrisy is innate just common. It's practically a character trait. Nowhere is this more evident than in the Season 3 saga known as Katie's motorboating scandal, a storyline so flimsy it barely qualifies as a subplot, let alone a scandal. But that didn't stop Kristen and JAX, two of the show's most seasoned sinners, from seizing the moment like moral authorities freshly anointed. Kristen, ever the crusader, when the spotlight isn't on her own mess, pounced with unsettling glee at the chance to condemn Katie for allegedly cheating via an entirely fabricated encounter involving a motorboat and a random man at a club. JAX, that paragon of loyalty and monogamy, happily fanned the flames, likely relieved to have even a momentary diversion from his own running tally of betrayals. The irony is so rich, it practically demands a tasting menu. Because in this grand game of moral gymnastics, no one seems to notice, or care, that Kristen herself famously imploded her relationship with Tom by sleeping with his best friend. Multiple times. And yet somehow, in the minds of Kristen and her co-conspirator, Katie's supposed flirtation, that didn't even happen, was the real sin. Let's be clear. Even if the motorboat incident had occurred, it wouldn't begin to rival the psychological warfare of cheating with your partner's best friend. But nuance rarely survives in the chaos vortex Kristen cultivates. It wasn't about facts or proportion, it was about deflection. As long as someone else was in the hot seat, Kristen could sip her wine and pretend the flames weren't licking at her own feet. Thankfully, the truth eventually surfaced. Sheena admitted she and JAX fabricated the motorboat story out of spite. Yes, the entire scandal was a cocktail of insecurity and retaliation, shaken with a twist of delusion. One of the few to emerge with dignity intact was Tom Schwartz, who immediately dismissed the rumor as untrue and uncharacteristic of Katie. A rare flicker of decisiveness from a man typically allergic to confrontation. Of course, it's hard to celebrate Schwartz too much. His own track record makes loyalty a laughable hill to die on, but at least he didn't entertain the idiocy of this particular witch hunt. As for Kristen, her behavior in Season 3 borders on sociopathic. Unhinged doesn't quite capture it. She wasn't merely messy. She was militant in her obsession with tearing others down, even while her own moral house was engulfed in flames, and while reports suggest she eventually evolves into a somewhat more grounded human being, post-show redemption arcs being all the rage, her actions during this era are indefensible. Then there's Ariana. Cold, calculated, and smug in her superiority, she emerges as a curious foil. Her own history of gaslighting and boundary skimming makes it difficult to muster much sympathy later on, when the karma wheel turns via Tom's betrayal. There's a poetic irony in how she ultimately suffers at the hands of the very dynamic she once exploited to undermine Kristen. Poetic, but not tragic. In the end, the motorboat scandal is a case study in the show's favorite pastime, weaponizing selective morality. If there's anything to take away from this season, it's that on Vanderpump Rules, truth is optional, loyalty is conditional, and hypocrisy is always trending. Forget the love story. This wasn't a wedding plan. It was a green card strategy wrapped in tulle. Rewatching Season 9, one is reminded that no milestone among this cast can unfold without a side dish of self-absorption and social tone deafness. Case in point, James and Raquel's engagement party, a lavish affair they generously hosted and paid for, intended as a celebration of their relationship. Naturally, this made it the perfect backdrop for Shiana and Brock to plot their own secret wedding. Yes, while the guests raised glasses to toast James and Raquel, Shiana was quietly packing wedding dresses, and Tom Sandoval had dutifully stowed his ordained minister credentials. Brock, never one to let good taste get in the way of convenience, was already whispering about sneaking off. Because apparently nothing says respect for your friends like hijacking their event to expedite your own nuptials. Eventually, even Sheena, queen of questionable timing, managed to call it off, briefly, but not before sobbing over not being able to debut her candy machine-grade engagement ring. And just when one thinks the spectacle might be over, the couple announces their engagement at a casual lunch, while James and Raquel are conveniently absent, sharing a moment with Lisa Vanderpump. Oh, and they gleefully reveal their original plan to elope during the party. Because if you're going to be tacky, why not be tacky and indiscreet? The whole ordeal smacks of desperation, wrapped in tulle and spray tan. Brock comes across as a bargain bin opportunist, while Sheena, true to form, continues to embody her own brand of obliviousness. There's also the unspoken urgency, the whispered possibility of a looming green card deadline that makes the entire charade feel less like romance and more like a logistical exercise. And then, in a chilling bit of hindsight, there's the reunion moment. Andy Cohen, ever the diplomatic host, tells Raquel she's beloved and praises her for the personal growth she's pursuing. Knowing now what unfolds next, the scene lands with an eerie weight, almost as if he saw the wreckage about to come and decided to toast the calm before the storm. Tacky, calculated, and unmistakably Sheena. Some things never change. Reality TV confessionals aren't real, and the producers don't want you to know how fake they actually are. Ever wonder how Bravo's reality stars manage to deliver perfectly phrased sound bites about events that supposedly happened in the moment? Welcome to the polished illusion of the confessional, a format that looks spontaneous but is, in truth, a finely tuned machine of post-production puppetry. Despite the illusion that these talking heads are reacting in real time to unfolding drama, nothing could be further from reality. Confessionals are filmed well after the fact, often halfway through the season's filming and continuing all the way to the reunion taping. In these sessions, cast members are not watching the footage, contrary to what the cleverly timed reaction shots would have viewers believe. They're responding to producer prompts, questions like, "What did you really want to say to so-and-so during that argument?" Or, "How did it feel when insert dramatic moment here?" The cast, dutifully coached, parrots back full-sentence responses that include the question itself, ensuring each clip is self-contained and ready for editing magic. And it is magic. Take, for instance, a seemingly throwaway moment. Brock and Shiana share a kiss. "Ay, sis," and the scene cuts to Lala gagging in her confessional. Spontaneous disgust? Not exactly. More likely, the producers fed her the moment. What was your reaction when you saw Brock and Shiana kiss? And she played her part, disgust included. The timing of the gag might be sharp, but the moment is entirely engineered. Some might ask how producers choose which scenes warrant a reaction. The answer lies not in significance, but in opportunity. A petty exchange, a lingering glance, a mumbled insult. Anything can be weaponized into a moment with the right reaction clip. It's not the event that matters. It's the editorial potential. Even the cast's ability to speak in confessional language doesn't come naturally. There's a learning curve. One can only imagine how many takes it takes to teach someone like Brittany to recite. When I heard James screaming pumptini at JAX in the middle of the restaurant, I felt like he was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. Natural? No. Effective? Absolutely. It's narrative control, not emotional truth. To ensure seamless storytelling, producers correct grammar, framing, even tone.